Well, hello there, people of the world. So today I was thinking that I'm gonna get a better green screen. One day I'm gonna get one that doesn't have this freaking line through it, ruining the green screen effect. Alright. But anyways, isn't this cool? I love green screens. Check this out. Watch this. Look at that. Isn't that cool? Look at this. Alright, that's enough. One more. Okay, we're on. Now I was gonna say, I'm gonna talk about something I've already talked about. But I'm gonna talk about this again because it's so freaking important. It's one of the most important things that I feel like I have a special insight on, and that is coping mechanisms. Once you understand this, you see the world in a different way. Most people have coping mechanisms. Not just one, not just two or three, layers upon layers and layers of delusion and coping mechanisms. It's like the operating system of their mind is coping mechanisms. And there are coping mechanisms, basically, it's a way that people lie to themselves to be happy. It's the basic gist of what a coping mechanism is.
So you lie to yourself to be happy. There's nothing wrong with that. We all do it.
It's denying something, it's deluding yourself for the purpose of comfort. That's it's coping. It's like forsaking the truth for a feeling better about something. And the main way you'll see this coping mechanism, people have coping mechanisms for like everything, but the main overriding coping mechanism that most people are, that most people have is with death. And people are basically, this is what religion is. Karl Marx said religion is the opium of the masses. What do you think heaven is? People so confident that there's a heaven. This is a coping mechanism so that they don't have to fear death. It's to comfort themselves. They want to think that there's a heaven. They want to think that there's a God and an afterlife because this brings them so much comfort. This is what is a coping mechanism. Just trying to paint the picture for you very clearly. But and just because something's a coping mechanism, I'm not saying it couldn't possibly be true. So just by nature of something, yes, it provides comfort, the idea of an afterlife. I'm not saying that in itself says that it couldn't possibly be true. I don't believe in an afterlife, but I have to remain agnostic about it. Like every other atheist that I've ever met, we're agnostic atheists. We're saying we don't believe in your afterlife, we don't believe in your God and all your, what we think are coping mechanisms, these heaven and everything. But we're agnostic about it still. We're not saying we know for sure, because that would be intellectually dishonest. But we're just saying there's no evidence for it, no proof. The burden of proof is kind of on you guys for making the claim. But look I'm just gotten off topic. Look at this. What I was going to say is, so atheists were also not immune to this coping mechanism with death. Most atheists also are filled with coping mechanisms and to try to comfort themselves with death. They're lying to themselves so that they don't have to fear death. And you'll see this take many forms in the atheist movement. Would you call it a movement? Sure. There's atheists who say, oh, well, it's okay that I'm going to die because I'm going to have a legacy through my children. Or they say, oh, it's okay that I'm going to die because, I'm going to write a book and I'm going to be remembered. I'm going to be famous. I'm going to have a YouTube channel and my videos are going to go on and people are going to look at these videos and they're going to remember me and how great I was. All of this is a delusion, a coping mechanism of these people so that they can feel comforted with death. And if you swallowed the red pill, like me, then you understand that if you die, you lose, and your life was meaningless, and there's no comfort to be had. When it comes to death, there is no comfort to be had. If dying renders your whole life meaningless, and it doesn't matter if you're famous, it doesn't matter if you had children, it doesn't matter if you had money or whatever, you had fun in your life. YOLO, that's what YOLO is. It's just another way that people are trying to comfort themselves with death. These are all coping mechanisms. They're all delusions. The red pill is understanding that if you die, you lose. Your whole life was meaningless. And once you understand this, and you understand that people would do anything to avoid this truth, this uncomfortable truth I'm telling you, once you understand that, you start to see everyone, and like everyone, even atheists, and they're all trying to cope with death. They're all lying to themselves. Layers of delusions to cope with death. Big atheists in the movement, small atheists, they're all doing the same thing. They're all just trying to wrestle and come to terms with death and try to find peace. Try to come to, it's okay that I die. They're all trying to lie to themselves. They're deluding themselves so that they could be happy. So it's really no different than religious people. It's just that delusion takes a different form with atheists. That's all it is. It's a different form, but it's still a delusion. The only honest way to see this and to think about death is that it's complete failure. Complete and utter failure. Like if you die, you failed. Completely. There's no consolation whatsoever. I mean, try to name a consolation. Like what could you possibly say that makes death that okay? Nothing. Nothing makes death okay. In no situation is death ever okay. There's no comfort to be had. That's the point. That's the honest. That's if you're taking the red pill. And so, yeah, basically everyone is just in a fantasy land. It's like a freaking fantasy land they've created. Delusions, and it's like a Twilight Zone. That's what life is. You look around and you're like, why aren't these people freaked out about death? Why aren't they talking about this? That's another coping mechanism. Just not wanting to even talk about it. That's why most people aren't talking about death. That's why they're not preoccupied about this and focusing on death. Their coping mechanism is literally just to avoid the topic. There are people who just avoid anything to have to do with death because they don't want to think about it. That's their denial. They're in denial. And here's another coping mechanism. People cope with death by accepting it and thinking that death is inevitable. Now you might ask, what? That doesn't sound like a coping mechanism. It is. They want to lose hope. They don't want hope in something like eternal life. What? Yeah. They don't want to have hope in eternal life because having hope that you might live forever is uncomfortable. Because then you're having to wonder. You're having to wonder, oh wow, there's this thing I really like. I would like to live forever. It's possible that I might live forever, but oh gosh, it might not happen. Something could happen and I could fail at this. People would rather not even have that as a hope. They would rather think that failure is inevitable, and that's their own coping mechanism, is giving in, surrendering to death. And you'll see that in the atheist movement as well. It's the surrendering. It's saying, I'm going to die. It's the fatalist. Fatalism itself is a coping mechanism. Because like I said, it's the comfort. It's kind of uncomfortable. I mean, the hope in eternal life is creates a tension. It's a tension within yourself, understanding that you're going to try for it, but you might fail if something goes wrong. That's my perspective. Living forever is just having the hope for it is stressful, because I'm having to work for it. Because I have hope, that's what causes me to work for my eternal life, work so hard for it. But it's stressful because it's not a guarantee. So I'm having to wonder, and there's always this fear in the back of my mind, and wondering, oh gosh, what could go wrong? What could go wrong? Now, compare that to the person who has just surrendered to death and given up. They don't have to worry about anything. Their fate, they've already decided. They're going to die. But for them, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. That person who has lost all hope, who has no hope in eternal life, though their life might be more comfortable because they've surrendered, they've somehow made peace with death or something, they're going to go through life being more comforted. They're not going to have that tension that I feel. But it's also going to be a self-fulfilling prophecy for them. They've given up. And when you've given up like that, you're not going to be motivated to do what I am motivated to do as someone who has hope in eternal life.
Oh, so there's still hope.
I don't want hope. Hope is killing me. My dream is to become hopeless. When you're hopeless, you don't care.
It's the idea of, in the Fight Club, there's this idea that says losing all hope is freedom. That's a coping mechanism. That's their coping mechanism. This is a popular one. A lot of atheists have this. Their coping mechanism is losing all hope. They have lost all hope in eternal life, and that is their own personal delusion that they're suffering from. Because an honest assessment would tell you that living forever is possible. You see what I'm saying? An honest assessment of the world would say, oh, wait a second, there's scientists. There's these scientists over here that are working on curing aging, on maybe finding a solution for death, and that would give you hope. But they don't want to have that hope. So they'd rather scoff at that and say, oh, that's not going to happen. No, that's a pipe dream. It's because that's their coping mechanism. They don't want hope. Because it's that losing all hope is freedom. It's that Fight Club mentality. They find freedom in being a fatalist and giving up, surrendering. And it's pathetic. It's pathetic. And they're more likely to die and not reap the benefits of eternal life. Eternal life. I'm talking about eternal life on earth with technology, science, curing aging, indefinite life extension, being healthy in these physical bodies forever if we're doing the right things. Another reason these atheists, they don't want to have hope in this eternal life is because then it puts some responsibility on them. Then they have something to fight for, and they would have to work harder. They would have to actually try to be healthy, because then they're thinking, but they'd rather not have to worry about health. They'd rather have this fatalistic attitude where they're going to die anyways, and then for them, it's just, oh, YOLO. You only live once. I'm just going to have a bunch of fun. Not going to have to worry about health being healthy. I'm not going to have to worry about preventing STDs. I'm not going to have to worry about living a prudent life, a safe life, avoiding these dangers, living cautiously. No. They don't want to have to worry about any of that. So their version of their coping mechanism is losing hope, surrendering to death, and they don't have to try. They've quit. They're quitting. They've given up, and they don't have to try anymore. And they could just go through life like it's some big game, some big joke, and YOLO, and they have a bunch of fun, and they die, and they lose. But they're losers. Yes, they had maybe more fun in their life. They had less stress, but they lost. They're complete and utter losers. Meanwhile, they had probably other coping mechanisms that they were, in addition to their loss of hope in eternal life, they had other coping mechanisms. Probably half of those people thought that their life would be meaningful if only they could leave some legacy. Only if they could leave their work leave some work behind. Leave children. All these atheists are filled with these delusions, these coping mechanisms. All of that stuff is meaningless if you die. Your children and your legacy and your fame and it's all pointless if you die. It's all sound and fury, signifying nothing, pointless, meaningless. This is the red pill that they cannot swallow. It's their delusion, their personal delusion, their coping mechanism. So I just find it rather hypocritical. In summary here, I'm just going to wrap this up. I find it rather hypocritical that many of my fellow atheists go around mocking the religious people for being deluded and latching on to these fairy tales like afterlife and heaven as a coping mechanism for death, and so they don't have to fear death. The atheists are mocking those people. Meanwhile, the atheists have just as much delusion to cope with their own death. Secular ways of coping with this leaving a legacy and having children and so on. So yeah, it's just like these atheists are no better. They're hypocrites. Hypocrites. They're all filled with delusions. So I would just leave you with this last thought. Go through life honestly. Go through life with an honest assessment, realizing the real painful truth of it all. But still, and the real painful truth is that having hope that we could live forever, because that's painful. It's painful to have hope, because then you have something in your horizons that you're trying really, really hard for and you really, really want. So there's a potential for extreme failure, I mean, this is the ultimate failure. Like, when you have eternal life as your goal, you've set the goal so high. So there's a tremendous pressure. But that pressure is good. That pressure is what causes us to strive. I'm always using this word strive because that's important. Eternal life is so hard. It's hard, and so you have to strive for it. You have to be almost obsessive, neurotic about it. Otherwise, what's going to make you different than everyone else? Think about it. People are dying everywhere, left and right. They're dropping like flies because they didn't care, and their lifestyle and their actions reflected their own apathy. They didn't care, and they're dead. They're rotting 6 feet under. Just dead people everywhere. The crematoriums are filling up. Smell the crematorium smoke, people. Wake up. Life is a nightmare, but there's a light at the end of the tunnel. And that light is that we could live forever. We could live forever. We really could. But we have to be so serious. Anyways, what's going to help you is understanding the value of eternal life. What's going to help you is being motivated by fear, the fear of death. Also, being motivated by just the understanding of how much of a treasure this is. Eternal life is a treasure. Think of it as the ultimate treasure of life. You should be fixated on this treasure. Your eyes need to be fixated on this treasure of living forever. And it should direct your whole life. It should inform all your actions, is that focus on eternal life. And everything else, your whole life, and how you live and how you conduct yourself, it should all fall in line to help your chances of living forever. I mean, that's the whole thing. and you'd be focusing on your strategy and perfecting your strategy. You'd become a perfectionist. The more perfect you are, the more likely you're going to live forever. Anyways, that is it. This has been a long rant, and I'm sure you guys have had enough. So, thank you guys, and may you live forever.
Last try. Get it right. What have you lost? What did I take from you? Write it. Yeah. Congratulations.